Our next session will be a panel hosted by Dr. Nadira Lamrad, the Assistant Director of Sustainability and ESG Advisory of Business Environment Council. And this session will be about new models for effective strategies. This session is also sponsored by Cundall. Thank you for your support. Please put your hands together to welcome Dr. Lamrad and the speakers on stage.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just going to make my way over here. So I'd like to, first of all, say a huge thank you to Chris, Siobhan, and the team behind Rethink. They've done an amazing job in these very difficult circumstances that we're dealing with. So, and I'd like to invite the speakers. So first is Verna Lin, the head of Greater China Regional Hub for GRI. We also have Jonathan Yao, who is Associate Director at Cundall. And we also have Bruce Wan, who is the Associate Professor. He's waving, he's on his way. Assistant Professor for Experience Design at Hong Kong Polytechnic University. So thank you all for joining us. My pleasure. Would you just pass one over? So I'd like to first start by giving everyone the opportunity to go ahead and share a little bit about yourselves. So just a few minutes maybe to introduce yourselves. So let's start with Bruce.
Hey, hello. My name is Bruce. I'm assistant professor at the School of Design, Hong Kong Polytechnic University. So my expertise is in experience design, design thinking, interaction design. So I'm glad today to be here to share with with you guys, my views on sustainability. And yeah.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Yao from Cundall. I'm a sustainability consultant, associate director of Cundall here. I'm providing consultancy service to Hong Kong and Asia region. By background, I'm engineers, designing low carbon building, but also working on research projects, working on sustainability strategies and R&D projects. So that's my background.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. My name is Verna Lin, and I'm representing GRI in Greater China region. That actually comprise three very different capital markets in terms of the structure, composition, how the regulators regulate, and how the ESG or sustainability practice evolve over time. So, GRI standards is the very first and the most well-adopted ESG disclosure standard globally. We started like 20 years ago. And at GRI, we help governments and business around the world to communicate and understand their impacts and communicate their impacts with their stakeholders. And I wanted to just re-emphasize that when we talk about impacts, we are looking at the impact outwards. That means we are looking at the direct, the positive or negative impacts directly or indirectly contributed by the company's business toward environment, society, or economy, not the other way around. And that's a huge difference. So yeah, so that's, I'm very looking forward to our conversation today. Thank you.
Okay, so to introduce the session once more, the question that we were asked to discuss was, what can product design and systems design learn from each other? And how can tools such as life cycle analysis help build better businesses and waste systems? Now, considering that Bruce is a professor and he's going to give us a very short, hopefully, lecture on developing these systems and making sure that everyone is aligned around these systems, these new systems.
Yeah. Of course, I think one of the challenge, is that we trained as expertise where we have our own background, our own academic training. And in fact, we speak very different language. When I go to, do the creation workshops, innovation thinking, they are not exactly, they share the same goal, like, okay, they understand sustainability is important, but they are not sharing the same mindset actually, or they are not using the same language. They are having a very different mental model, I would say, because I'm working on experience design. So, so I think that is very important, not only to have people, working together, but they need to, speak the same language, knowing, what are the, we know, the ultimate goal, but we don't know the path. We don't know, all the checkpoints that we need to do. So, well, when we do, design thinking workshops and everything is to not only to put people together, talk about it, but also to have them to speak the same language and to know where build some kind of consensus. What I want to say. Yeah.
So Jonathan, going to you, I know that Cundall has some experience in trying to build a system, so to speak, product design, around product design, let's say, for a construction industry. So can you give us a little bit of a flavor of how you were able to bring everyone around the same mindset and kind of push things forward, especially around the embodied carbon tool?
Yeah, absolutely. So Cundall, we were appointed by Construction Industry Council 2 years ago to develop an embodied carbon assessment tools for Hong Kong construction industry. It was a very challenging project because when it started, we had very, very little information to start with. I mean, in Hong Kong, there are databases specific to Hong Kong developed by universities, but they are not enough to cover the need of the industry to help the industry to move forward. So when we start, we just struggling to say, oh, hey, how should we do it? But then we just try to start with something small, and we start talking to different people, engaging contractors, suppliers, developers, governments. Like Bruce said, just to understand what do you see, what's the language, what's the concern, and why do you see that's a problem, why you're struggling, and then work out a solution together in hands. And then eventually we just start working on with our international office, with our UK offices, where they have lots of expertise in this area. We've done lots of researches, looking at all the database around the world, and then to develop a database that's specific to Hong Kong, and then put them into a platform. And then the tool is now online, free for everyone. And then we also engage BIM Society, which is the organization certifying green buildings in Hong Kong, to put that embodied carbon assessment become part of the green building assessment. So that will encourage a lot of people to use that as well. So eventually now we're having several hundreds project registration. It's just at the beginning, but then now they're able to assess the embodied carbon footprint, which they are not allowed to do so before. So that's how we work together and do something for industry.
And are you actually integrating this into Cundall's work as well, internally?
Yes. So we've done lots of things to also internalize this knowledge and expertise. So, for example, one key thing we found is that I mean, if you just look at embodied carbon alone, it can be like, it's got very little to do with a consultancy business, because we don't actually build things. We're just providing professional service as a business nature. But then we found the tricks is when we relate our skills, knowledge, and sustainability to our business core skills, we can actually generate something new that didn't exist before. So, for example, our HR department are very passionate in educating our own staff about sustainability. We even have our own diploma program. We call it Cundall Diploma, compulsory to all of our graduates, and I can tell you that's the diploma is not easy. It's like equivalent to like a university diploma program.
You need to write a thesis, right? At the end.
And then the amazing things happened when you start educating people with different background about sustainability. I mean, my background in sustainability, like I understand embodied carbon, I can tell people how to assess it, but it's very difficult for me to come up with solutions to help building actually reduce their embodied carbon. But when you tell these things to our structural engineers, which they actually design stuff and specifying concrete design structures, when they understand what it means to them and they embrace it, they blend it with their own core skill, which is design structures. So what they've done, something very amazing, is that they have a software that can do structural design parametrically, which means the computer can do lots of iterations, hundreds of simulations in a very short time period to find out the best solution. They integrate that skills with embodied carbon knowledge, combine those two inner skills that they can design buildings to reduce the embodied carbon just by putting these two concepts together. And amazingly, they managed to save like 45% of embodied carbon in one of their recent projects. So that's something how we bring down this sustainability to our own company and make impacts to industry.
Okay, so in a way, it's kind of educating internally the responsible people who would be implementing the ideas and the plans.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and making sure that they align around, of course, the mindset around sustainability. So let's move on to Verna. Verna, I have a question for you about the new GRI Waste Standard.
Yes.
What are your thoughts, or what is GRI's view when it comes to the change in mindset around waste? Are they trying to kind of drive a shift away from a linear approach, just waste use waste and then like dispose, to something more circular?
Yes. So this is actually, so the new waste standard is actually very interestingly, one of the key elements of the new waste standard, which was released earlier this year, it's about the concept of value chain, and then the idea of how it's related to circularity. So basically, when GRI is considering updating or revising a new standard, there's reasons. Normally, we identify the problems or reasons for revising the standards, right? So there's actually two of the key thoughts. It's that waste is actually a consequence of decisions made long before it's generated, right? And the second thought is that waste is actually a resources that ended up in the wrong place, or it's actually a result of a poorly designed system. Put it into another word. So the new waste standards, we wanted to challenge how companies measure and understand waste by changing the perception of waste as unwanted residue into waste as a resource. So that is basically the key element of circularity. So the new waste standard, we wanted to guide the company to identify and understand which part of, in their internal companies, which part of the waste was generated. And then by understand it, you identify the risk and opportunities to know in which phase you could change it. And then you could improve your waste management system. So yeah, that's a whole, the connection, and to obviously wanted to lead into a circular economy.
This sounds a little bit like something that Bruce would actually discuss in his courses.
Yeah, well, I think one of the important things to this kind of problem is to make the unseen seen, actually, because on the process, we produce a lot of waste that is unseen. I mean, nobody knows it unless you talk about it, unless you showed it. Talk about the food chain, talk about the, building. in the process of making, they produce quite a lot of waste, and without specific person to point it out or to raise it, you didn't notice it, actually. So this is one of the way to make people be more aware of all these, unwanted, waste or whatever outcome it is produced.
I suppose in some ways the embodied carbon tool is kind of making the unseen be more visible.
Yeah, be more visible.
Exactly. I mean, for example, the embodied carbon tools that we're working on is able to using data to provide visibility to the project. So which means, like in the past, like waste is waste. Yeah, that's not my problem. It's not in my construction site anymore. Full stop. But now you're able to measure it and record it on a completely open, transparent platform, and then you can start managing it, and then say, hey, it's actually contribute to my carbon emissions. So what should I do? And then you can start talk to recyclers, talk to your subcontractors, to trying to find a way to use the waste in a more useful way, like recycling or upcycling them or whatever.
Is it your view that Cundall is actually a better business, according to the questions? A better business because of your LCA approaches, life cycle assessment approaches?
Yeah, I definitely say yes, not because I have to say yes, We have seen many changes. Just to let you know, we're actually the first engineering consultant firm in the world certified as a carbon neutral business. And that's really an achievement. And by targeting this, it's actually fundamentally changed the way we operate the business. So I can give you a few examples. So for example, long time ago, we already want to adjust our emission in air flight travelings because we are international companies, lots of flight between offices, and we want to reduce that. So long time ago, we invest heavily in our IT infrastructures so that we can do video conferencing and work remotely. And that's before COVID, that everyone using Zoom and Team for meetings. So, but then that's give us position us in a very good position that we got used to it already. So when we're now in pandemic, our business just operate as usual, feeling very comfortable to do that because we've been doing that for a long time. And the other thing is also when we start educating our staff the importance of sustainability, circular economy, embodied carbon, this sort of stuff, you start seeing people will take that and convert that into their own new skills and new response to our business. So just like the example I mentioned before, like you never thought a structural engineers can actually do lots of sustainability things. But just because they embrace the same vision with you, and then now we come up with new skills, new capabilities that can sell to clients, and actually attracting new clients and new business and more avenues. So I would say yes, definitely we now become a much better business.
Okay, we have a question from the audience already. So everyone else, please feel free to put together your questions and we'll get to them. So from Emma. Hello, Emma. How do we ensure true collaborative and integrated design involving different disciplines for the design of new products or projects?
Well, it really depends what kind of product or project that we are working on, because some project is more specific, like product development. Just when I come here, I see there are some robots or there are some products. So that is one type of things. Another kind of product, what I see is more like a system, like you guys working on is a system. So I think these two should be tackled in quite a different ways actually, because when we talk about the specific products, we can design it, we can conceptualize it, we can invite user to use it to give feedback for that particular product. But for a system, that is much more intangibles, and it often involves a lot of different stakeholders, direct users, which means in such a case, we need to think of turn it as a system, just like service design, that we think about different touch points or different stakeholders, how different stakeholders have a say or can be involved actively in constructing or designing these systems. That's why I go back to the questions, the point I raised at the beginning is how to make this wish or concerns explicit. Because whenever a stakeholder involved in the design of the system, sometimes they don't even know what they want or what they need. So it takes a lot of iterations. So I think the process in itself is very important, because the process in itself is a learning. So for any kind of system, it's constantly evolving, right? So you launch it, maybe it's not that good at the beginning, even, perform much worse than, the current system, but you can, improve it, and you can find, some points that you can fix it. Maybe, that's my views on that.
Do you have any practical kind of direct experience with this that you can share, Jonathan?
Yeah, and I think when we dealing with system and design and a lot of stakeholders, I want to bring to the point that collaboration is really, really important. So, for example, when we were working on the embodied carbon assessment tool, which is very challenging, difficult task, we choose to be collaborative. So, what means because we're consultants, so normally in consultants industry, you tend to like, okay, I tell clients, yes, I can do it, give you money, I do the job, get it done. But for these type of things, like you just can't be experts of everything. You need different brains, you need different expertise to get things done. So when we are working on the embodied carbon assessment tool, because it's involved construction, involved supply chain, and we just can't do all of this on our own. So we actually partner with a really good construction company, Gammon Construction, together to develop that. Because yeah, we are designers, we are consultants, and we've done lots of research, and they have lots of practical experience in how things actually works. And the key thing is they speak the right language to the suppliers. They understand their struggles, they understand what can be done, and why people are not doing certain things. And when you got the right team in the same working together, and the magic will just happen. So I would say, when we try to address sustainability, it's so important just to bring people with different background together and try to work it out together. And often you can get much better solutions.
I wanted to actually, build on what these gentlemen are saying, especially Bruce, when you say there's no perfect system, right? So for instance, the new waste standard, the standard guides the companies through the reporting process. There's actually no expectation from the standard that there's no expectation to say that, we expect the company has already a perfect waste management system or ready solutions to it, right? But during the process, when Jonathan also mentioned, during the process, your reporting process is not just about report, it's when you are working with all your departments, everybody, and then the report is an outcome for your communication with your stakeholders, shareholders, or investors. But then, in the process, you also could better understand your own waste management system, for instance, and then you could identify the interventions for better, that could lead to change and could lead to a better waste management system and performance. So that's a whole concept about the system and then the integration internally.
Okay, any questions from the audience before we continue? Any other questions? Yes, please.
Hi, this is Max from Carbon Base. I wanted to follow up on a comment made by a panelist about the ability to have the information from the disclosure and sort of the net zero ambitions be communicated all the way to the end user. I think Professor Wan has talked about like how do you sort of design these experiences. I think right now there's a big disconnect between the corporate sustainability efforts on the half of the CSR reporting team, and so the reports people write, and then also the choices we as consumers can look at and make conscious decisions about. So I'd love to hear the panelists' thoughts on that. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe let's start with the, I can give my comments actually, but, but I mean, basically we have a set of standards that we follow as sustainability professionals, and it's our job to make sure that we follow these standards and they are the best practice. But as to the actual, how do I, like what people can implement, it does take a lot of effort to bring people together and to make sure that things that are kind of moving forward in a way that you want. And as Bruce had mentioned before, making sure that everyone has the same mindset, making sure that everyone's moving in the same direction, and it's all different kinds of people. So if we're trying to facilitate movement towards an objective from all different kinds of people who have all different kinds of other pressures. Their primary focus may not be sustainability and sustainability reporting and disclosure. But I mean, I think we do our best, yes, to defend the profession.
As I'm listening as a business person,
Yeah.
the one element that I haven't heard as part of the conversation yet, you just spoke to, which ties back to initial comment from the professor around translation. They don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
As a business person who cares deeply about the environment, the trade-offs are the key. It's not free, right? There's a business trade-off that had to be made. That to me is the most interesting part of the whole conversation. How do we have the right conversation about trade-offs that allow us to move in the right direction in an acceptable way? It's exactly what you're talking about. How do you get everybody aligned on what we can actually do? So I'd love to hear the panel's thoughts on what's a best practice? Because all of us here are trying to move this thing in this direction, but we need help. What's the best practice for having the right trade-off discussion with business leaders and sustainability leadership?
Well, on my understanding, this trade-off can have different levels as well. When we design a system, they have a trade-off, of course. But if it goes to individual level, there's a big trade-off as well. Say, well, I just thinking of a fitness app, say for example, something that nudge you to go to the gym, hit the gym every day, right? Of course, I don't know how many people go to gym or do regular sports. Well, we all know that do sport is good for us, but they have always a big resistance, right? And this resistance is kind of trade-off, which means you put a time to take care of yourself and then build good health, and then you put another more enjoyable activity aside, right? To me, that have no a golden solution. So, but we can design for this specifically, because everyone's trade-off is a little bit different, right? So we need to when we do the design, we need to see what kind of solution to that person, and maybe that solutions may not fit the others. So we need to have a range of opportunity, a range of solutions offered to them, rather than one single solutions. That's my point of view in that.
Yeah. Jonathan, when you've kind of experienced barriers to the concept of embodied carbon, how did you get past the mindset that actually this is not something that we need to think about, it's not our responsibility, or this would cost us a lot, those kinds of questions?
I'll say it's still a problem at the moment. But the way we try to overcome it, as to there's several ways. I mean, I probably don't have the perfect answer, but the way we tried before is to speak their language and address their problems, actually. So for example, 2A suppliers, if you want them to disclose all of their carbon emission data, it involves lots of work. Not that they can't do it, but it takes them lots of efforts, and there isn't a very strong reason for them to do it, because the market is not asking for that. So the way we do it is just like Simon mentioned before. You can't forget the policy. So we work with Construction Industry Council. We work with BIM Society. We work with government, so that we come up with policy and strategies that create an incentive to them. That if they don't do that, they're actually going to lose business in very short periods, and that's become a risk to them. So that they have to put efforts to address it. So, for example, they setting up in CIC Sustainable Construction Award. Every single applicant have to use the tool to disclose their carbon emissions, and when project need to disclose the tools, then suppliers need to provide information. And if you're not able to do that, you're affecting someone to go to the next level, and you might not able to do the business with them in future. So we use these kind of strategies to provide incentive to them, so that they in a position aware that, yeah, if I'm not doing that, that's become my problem. So that's the trade-off that we try to do.
So reframing the discussion away from trade-offs to opportunities in a way.
Yes, that's a very positive way to do that. Yeah.
Reframing the question of disruption to more of this is a good way forward for the company, actually.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Does that answer your question? It helps, okay. Yes, please.
I'd like to comment on what Marty said, and the panel just responded. I think trade-offs is a very dangerous conversation when we're trying to have a sustainable world, because as Ray Anderson of Interface famously said, there isn't a business case to destroy life on Earth. So trade-offs should be looked at in terms of, okay, turning it around, and what do we need to do? What are the opportunities? And if we look at it from a stakeholder perspective, not everybody will like the outcome. But if there's a proper engagement to achieve a consensus on what is the best outcome for the greater good from an economic, environmental, and social point of view, then we can get somewhere. And it really is about where's the shared value.
Yeah.
Which Gail thinks you have to make a profit for it to be shared value, but if you look at just creating better opportunities, and if you go back to what Robert Gibson said this morning, cruise liners, unless they can run on clean fuel, they shouldn't exist. So business people would say you can't have that kind of trade-off, you can't talk like that. But a 2-degree world is a terrifying world. So we have to start having those extremely difficult conversations and look at what will move the needle to create that shared value that's going to get us to a more sustainable world.
So that's actually, like, we are all wanted to move toward to the perfect sustainability world, but I also recognize what the question was made because of the reality we are facing, the trade-off, the communication. I just wanted to add some points. It's like this. It depends on the size of the organization. And it also depends on the the resources of one entity. There's different reasons for a company or an organization to pursue sustainability. So a lot of them, for example, the SMEs, they are doing this to fulfill regulatory requirement mainly. And then there's thought leaders, right? They really wanted to contribute because they are big enough. They could do that. And then there's other companies, they wanted to take the leadership role in their industry, right? So the motivations and the communication with these three types of companies are very different. So for the leadership in the industry, they simply, the way to communicate is to communicate with your board or shareholder, because ultimately, if you take the leadership role in sustainability, you will turn into business opportunity. That's how you communicate. For the second part, the second category of the industry who they wanted to do good in the world, the way of communicating is it's basically the sustainability we are not turning back, right? It's a revolution. So all the capital spotlight, it's endless. So that's also in the long run, mid-run, it's also help your business as well as your stakeholders. And there's also one important pull from your investors. Their demand for you to do sustainability, right? And as for the small entity SMEs, there's so-called trade-off, and then you have to face in the difficult challenges. So that's what Jonathan talked about, the carrot and stick. So there's a business case when, for instance, ASUS is a Taiwanese company, a huge company. So what it do to their suppliers for instance, in China or South Asia is they provide both carrot and stick. So if you don't meet certain environmental requirement, you will not become our supplier next year or next quarter. And if you do, if you fulfill certain types of standards, then we're gonna give you more orders. So that's basically different three types. I think that might help.
Okay, we've come to the end. I've already been informed that I'm over time, in fact. So just to sum up some of the actions, post-event actions for the delegates, which we were asked to put together. So first is don't wait for the perfect system. So start imperfect and iterate. This is something that I think is really important. I think all companies are, when they're trying to improve their sustainability performance or trying to integrate sustainability into their work and have everyone aligned, this really is the real situation. It's basically going back and forth and talking to people and making sure that you're meeting their needs and at the same time fulfilling your objectives. The next is in product design, consider a holistic approach. So include all different people into the discussion and encourage alternatives such as zero waste or cradle to cradle. And for you guys, we're talking more about embodied carbon. And finally, find the synergy and work with your peers in the industry, which, as we've seen with the Construction Industry Council, with Cundall, and as well as Gammon. But I would say that this is something that needs to happen on a regular basis anyway, no matter what we do. So thank you so much, everyone, for the very interesting conversation. And I hope we can continue the discussion after the panel. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lamrad, and our speakers, and to everyone that was contributing and being engaged. We will now